Welcome to Joy Recovery Radio, the place where couples like you can discover healing and hope after sexual infidelity and betrayal trauma. We're here to share insights, strategies, and real-life stories that support both sides of the recovery journey. We're passionate about getting this message of hope and healing to as many couples as possible. The best way you can help us do that is by engaging with our podcast. Please take a moment to follow us on Apple Podcasts and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Liking our episodes and leaving a 5-star review also makes a huge difference, helping others find our community when they need it most. On today's episode, we're not just talking about why emotional intimacy is vital, but how men can actually build these skills. Roy is introducing a revolutionary new tool called H.E.L.P, an acronym designed to help men get the daily reps they need to cultivate vulnerability and create new neural pathways for emotional growth. This isn't just about individual growth. It's about starting a countercultural movement, redefining what it means to be a man by embracing emotional vulnerability and intimacy. Stay tuned to learn how you can be a part of this transformative movement.
Hi, my name's Jacqueline, and I'm here with my husband. And today we're going to be talking about emotional intimacy. So, Roy, what is emotional intimacy?
Well, there's three key aspects to emotional intimacy. One way to think about it is a three-legged stool. If you're missing one of these, you're not going to have emotional intimacy. The three elements are vulnerability, psychological safety, and acceptance. So let me unpack a little bit about what those three are. Vulnerability is being your authentic self. It's being transparent. It's revealing your deepest thoughts, your feelings, including your fears, your insecurities, your struggles, without any fear of judgment or criticism or rejection. So that's vulnerability. Psychological safety is this sense of security. It allows you to be vulnerable, knowing that the other person is going to treat your vulnerability with respect and they're going to care for you. And then the third leg of the stool is acceptance. This is where you feel like I can be fully transparent because I'm going to be fully accepted, flaws and all, by this other person. So I feel safe. And the dynamic is both parties struggle with all three of these, the betrayed partner and the betrayer. They both struggle with vulnerability for different reasons. They both struggle with psychological safety. They both struggle with acceptance. And so this is a real challenge for couples.
Why is emotional intimacy so critical after infidelity?
Well, a lot of studies show that apart from sobriety, this is the most critical expressed need from the betrayed partners. In fact, emotional intimacy is the arena where trust is either rebuilt or it's lost. So she's observing, can he even be transparent with me? Is he willing? Is he able? Because clearly I didn't know this guy. And we're going to have to start all over. This is relationship 2.0. You can't have the old relationship back. And why would you want to? But if there is going to be a future, if you're going to stay together, and if there's any hope of a bright future together, this new relationship has to be built upon the foundation of emotional intimacy. So this becomes the make or break for her. And you know what's really important for the guys to understand? A lot of the guys, they're eager to get back into physical intimacy if that's not happening in the coupleship. If they want the hope of a really deep level of physical intimacy in the future, they're going to have to understand that for most women and for their heart, they see emotional intimacy as the preceding factor for physical intimacy. They're not going to feel safe to be physically intimate until there is emotional intimacy. So rebuilding emotional intimacy is typically recommended before you can fully restore physical intimacy. So this can be a powerful motivating factor for the guy. However, he does not need to see emotional intimacy as the hoop to jump through so that I can have physical intimacy. She can see right through that. That's not really honoring the importance of emotional intimacy, and that's not real genuine. I think in a very real way for the betrayed partner, there's this paradox that's going on for her. Her greatest need is also her biggest threat at the same time, and that is emotional intimacy. For the guy, it's also difficult, but it's difficult for different reasons. The myth is that men don't have the ability to be vulnerable or to be attuned to their emotions and express them to their partner. That's not true. That is a myth. It's that we don't have the practice. We have the muscle, but it's atrophied because of a lack of use. Our emotional development stopped when our acting out to emotionally regulate began. So for many of us, it was in our adolescence. For many of us, emotionally, we men, we are adults. We are still adolescents when it comes to our emotions. And just think about how crazy teenagers are with their emotions. That's where many of us are at when we begin recovery. So it's not that we don't have the ability, it's that we don't have the practice. Compounded by the fact that we have been conditioned by just the socialization of so many sources, from our primary caregivers to coaches growing up to teachers to extended family to friends to media to culture. What is a man? A man is not emotional. A man doesn't express his emotions. A man is not vulnerable. A man doesn't have fears, and if he does have fears, he doesn't admit them, and he certainly doesn't talk about them. To be an emotional person is to be feminine. That's what we're told. And so for us to develop vulnerability, transparency, and emotional intimacy with another human being, we have to actually go against the grain. We have to go against our own conditioning. In other words, we have to do something we've never done before to experience something that we've never experienced before. And that is emotional intimacy in a relationship. And it feels so terribly risky. If I was to draw a line and show that this is the scale of risk on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest form of risk, many of the men I work with, when they talk about vulnerability and emotional intimacy, they put that perceived risk for them on an 8 to 10 on that scale. But what we have to appreciate is that us asking the betrayed partner to take the risk of staying in this relationship is about 100 on the scale. So we're asking her to take the risk of, would you stay in this relationship, on a level 100 on the risk scale. But we're not willing to take the risk on a level 8 to 10 of becoming emotionally vulnerable, transparent, rigorously honest, and pursue emotional intimacy. So the emotions are there. It's not like men don't have emotions. They're just not attuned to them. The good news is they can unlearn their conditioning and they can develop the skill because of a magical thing in our brains called neuroplasticity. The way God made our brains is that they can adapt. It turns out an old dog can learn new tricks. So one amazing study that came out in 2001 by Pascal, Leon, and Hamilton was incredibly encouraging when it comes to our brain's ability to learn new skills. This is mind-blowing. Listen to this. In the study, they took a sample of people, young and old, male and female, and these volunteers were willing to be blindfolded for 10 days. They had to do everything with deprivation of vision. So they couldn't see anything. They were having to rely upon their other senses for 10 days to navigate and live through their daily life. They did a brain scan before the study and after the study. And what they found was the brain actually reorganized itself within 3 days. And the visual cortex, which is called the occipital lobe, which is the area of the brain that's normally dedicated to processing visual information. Those neurons completely changed their purpose by day 3 when they realized, oh, this human can't see anymore, and they're relying upon tactile touch with fingertips, and they're relying upon hearing in order to navigate their environment. So we're going to redirect these neurons that are normally dedicated to vision, and now they are being recruited to process 2 things: touch, specifically in the fingertips, and extra sensitivity with sound. So that is a beautiful picture of neuroplasticity, that yes, we've been conditioned to think and relate a certain way when it comes to our emotions, but we can't use that as an excuse. Yes, in our adolescence, most of us began our acting out behavior, and that arrested our emotional development, but we're men today. We're not stuck with that. What are we doing to change that? So there's 2 practical things that men can do in particular to create that new neural pathway, to develop that new habit of vulnerability. It requires 2 things: intention and repetition. You have to be intentional. This has to be a clear goal of yours. And repetition, you've got to get your reps in. So when it comes to intention, we have to challenge limiting beliefs. Some of the limiting beliefs that I had to challenge if I was going to have this intention of being vulnerable. One of my beliefs was this: vulnerability is a weakness. Another was this: if I'm vulnerable, I'm going to be judged as less than a man. Another limiting belief I had was, if I'm vulnerable, I'm going to get hurt. And that is the risk. I mean, to be vulnerable is basically to give someone permission to hurt you. That's what the betrayed partner went through. They were vulnerable. They got burned for it. Now they're really reluctant to be vulnerable again. We have these limiting beliefs that we're going to have to replace with counter beliefs, such as, I don't know if I ever told you this, Jacqueline, but this is one of the counter beliefs that I told myself to help develop the skill of vulnerability with you. And that is this: Jacqueline finds authenticity and vulnerability very attractive.
I do.
And when I began to tell myself that, because I want to be attractive to you, that is a motivating factor for me to counter the belief that I used to have, which is, I'm going to get hurt, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be rejected, this is me being less than a man, or this is a sign of weakness. And so that's an example of intention. You have to address the limiting beliefs. Let's talk about repetition. You need to get your reps in. What the Gottmans found in their research is that when it comes to these neural pathways that we've created, especially things that are really embedded in our limbic system, it takes a 20-to-1 ratio of corrective experiences to undo that learning. In other words, for all those times that it was reinforced to us that being vulnerable is not being a man, that being vulnerable is going to get you hurt in this world, that being vulnerable is not worth the risk, that being vulnerable is opening yourself up to rejection. All those messages, there has to be a 20-to-1 ratio of corrective experiences where we were vulnerable with someone who was safe and we didn't die. I mean, we lived to talk about it. We survived. And this is a corrective experience in our limbic system that lets go of the messaging that vulnerability is not safe. And now we begin to understand vulnerability is manageable. We begin to feel confident in our ability to tolerate vulnerability, to cope with the fear of vulnerability. We realize that we can face this fear and that our anxiety really does pass and we really do survive, and we don't need to escape, and we don't need to numb or medicate, and we don't need to avoid. But this is worth it. This is the path to true intimacy with our partner.
At joy-recovery.com, we offer personalized recovery coaching to help you move from pain to purpose. We also provide supportive groups where you can connect with others who truly understand. So, whether you're battling addiction, healing from betrayal, or rebuilding a brand new relationship, you're not alone. We can help. Go to joy-recovery.com today.
So I'm so excited because you've created a new tool for the men to help build this skill. And you call it, I think, the H.E.L.P tool.
That's right.
H-E.L.P.
That's right. And it's an acronym because I love acronyms.
You do love
Yeah.
acronyms.
Yeah. H-E.L.P. So let's talk about what this tool is. What I'm going to recommend is that the men practice with other safe men until the women are ready to opt in when it comes to being vulnerable and utilizing this tool. When she feels safe enough with sustained safety over time, where she can let her guard down and she can be vulnerable with you. But you don't wait for her. You don't wait for that. You need to build this muscle. You need to be getting reps in every day. And that's where the H.E.L.P tool comes in. So let me describe what the acronym is. It's H-E.L.P. H is what was a high from today. L is what was a low from today. And the E in between is what were the emotions attached to the high? What was the emotion attached to the low? And then the P is preoccupation. What was I preoccupied with today? What was I thinking about the most? What was I afraid of, or what was I anxious about? And this is very vulnerable. This is putting on some training wheels and starting to learn how to ride the bike of vulnerability. These are baby steps, but these are really important reps. These are the corrective experiences. You're not going to become vulnerable by listening to this podcast. You're not going to become vulnerable by going to an intensive or reading a book. You're not going to become vulnerable by doing the 12 steps. You're going to become vulnerable by getting corrective experiences where you were vulnerable in a safe environment and it corrected that myth that's stuck in your limbic system. And so, for example, if I was doing H.E.L.P right now with a brother or with you, Jacqueline, my high might be, my high today, I was having a really good, uninterrupted conversation with my daughter on the way to school this morning. And we talked about her interest and she opened up to me and I felt really connected to her. And so the emotion that was attached to that was I really felt present and I felt loved and loving during that talk with my daughter. It filled my cup. It made me feel like a good dad. It also brought me a lot of joy to see her light up as we connected like we did. So that could be the high from today and the emotion I felt. The low, for example, could be I was having an argument with Jacqueline over something really small and insignificant, whether to leave the dishes until tomorrow morning or go ahead and do them tonight after dinner. It ended quickly, but it just didn't feel resolved. And so I still feel a little tension inside of it. So what was the emotion attached to that? Well, after that mini argument, I felt a lot of irritation at first and annoyance, but then it shifted to feeling like my wife and I were distant. And I was feeling sad that something so minor that I would allow that to create space between her and I. I also felt a little bit of guilt and shame for allowing it to escalate when it really didn't need to. And then if I give an example of preoccupation, it might be, I've been preoccupied today. I've been anxious with this looming deadline at work that I don't feel prepared for. And it's making me feel inadequate right now and incompetent. And I feel stressed that I might potentially let my boss down. So these are some examples of what H-E.L.P might look like.
So how would men listening today implement the tool?
Well, here's a couple of principles to follow, because what I hope you'll do is share this episode with another brother that you feel safe with and ask them, listen to this. Are you interested in doing a H.E.L.P group? And all it takes is 2 guys, and all it takes is 5 to 10 minutes. You can invite a third guy. You can invite a fourth guy, and I'll tell you what to do if that happens. But understand, this is not a discussion. This is not a meeting. You don't want this to take long. You want to get your reps in and go on with your day. So this literally should be 5 or 10 minutes. It's not a discussion. They do their H.E.L.P check-in. You do your H.E.L.P check-in. And the only response you have to each other is, thank you for sharing. That's it. This is a psychologically safe environment. We're going to practice being vulnerable, and we accept each other. We're not going to ask questions. We're not going to place judgment. We're not going to make some kind of valuation statement on what you shared. We're not going to try and rescue you from your emotions. This isn't therapy. This isn't a group. This isn't a discussion. We have the same goal. We want to grow in emotional vulnerability so we can pursue emotional intimacy, especially with our partners. We need corrective experiences. That's what this is. Let's get our reps in. So it's literally 5 to 10 minutes. 2 to 3 men is all it takes. I encourage you to get your reps in daily. So if there's a guy in your life that doesn't want to do it every day, ask him, could you do Mondays and Thursdays? And then find other men that you feel safe with that want to grow in the same area you do and fill in those days so that you're getting reps every day. Every day you're sharing high, low emotions to each and what was I preoccupied about. Now, here's the exciting part. We really want to create what could be called a subversive movement of men who are leaving the man box, redefining what it means to be a man, and embracing emotional vulnerability and emotional intimacy. We want to see this become a movement. And here's how you can do that in a very grassroots, organic way. When you have a fourth guy that's consistently coming to your H.E.L.P group, it's time to multiply. 2 groups of 2. And you just keep multiplying so that more men are getting reps in and more men are having these corrective experiences and more men are strengthening this muscle so they're ready to be emotionally vulnerable and pursue emotional intimacy with their partners. Here's what a normal guy is like in our culture. They don't have emotions unless it's anger. They never turn down sex. They watch porn. They devalue and dehumanize and objectify women. They never ask for help. They never offer help. They have no fear, and if they have fear, they don't admit it and they don't talk about it. Emotions are deemed feminine qualities, and you're either a girl or you're gay if you have emotions. You certainly never cry, and if you cry, don't let anyone see you, and you're always in control. That's what normal looks like in our culture for being a man. Here's what a freak looks like. If you want to be a freak like I'm pursuing, this is what you want to look like. You keep your pants on, you stay faithful to your partner, you bless, protect, and respect women as equals. You are in touch with your emotions, you are vulnerable, you admit your fears, you ask for help when you need it, you offer help to others, and you let go of controlling other people, especially your partner.
Let's do some final thoughts. So I have a couple. What are your final thoughts before we close out today?
When you repeatedly engage in a new behavior, you are creating a new neural pathway that this is possible for you to develop this skill. It's kind of like someone who has a phobia of spiders. One of the ways that they help that person overcome that fear is exposure. So it may start off with a picture of a spider, and then it may go from there to a fake spider. And then it might go to a spider that's across the room in a glass jar. And then it progresses to walking closer to that spider. And then if the person really wants to overcome their phobia, they begin to actually touch or hold the spider. But there is this process of exposure to the fear, of having corrective experiences with the source of your fear, so that you get to the point that you realize this isn't a threat to me. This is manageable. I can handle this exposure. It's the same way with our fear of vulnerability. This is a way to get exposure. This is a way to have corrective experiences.
And I want to share that emotional intimacy isn't just difficult for the betrayer. It's also extremely difficult for the betrayed partner. And for several reasons. One is the attachment injury, the loss of trust and safety, compounded by what is real. Second, we've got the sexual injury, which is body issues for some of us, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, especially around intimacy and feeling insecure. And another element is the emotional and psychological injury, which is the realization that I've been gaslighted, I've been manipulated, I've been deceived, I've been lied to, I've been defrauded. These feelings can lead to us barricading ourselves to create safety. And in that barricading ourselves for safety, there's an element of if I let my guard down, he will revert to his old behaviors. The reason why I'm sharing this is because emotional intimacy cannot exist without vulnerability and transparency from the betrayer. Being vulnerable is often perceived as I'm giving you permission to hurt me, to shame me, to judge me. But the truth is, we're just trying to get to know who you are. We're trying to understand where and why these behaviors happened. We're trying to protect ourselves. So you don't get to filter out what you think we should hear. We just want transparency. And that is a critical element to the rebuilding the relationship, the coupleship, the marriage. And we're really leaning in to the men to display it first.
Yeah, so men, in closing, let's start a counter-cultural, counter-conditioning movement among our brothers. Share this video with them, start some help groups, reach out, let me know how it's going. Thanks for joining us today.
That wraps up another episode of Joy Recovery Radio. We hope our conversation today brought you clarity, comfort, or a new perspective on your journey. Remember, healing is possible and you don't have to walk this path alone. To learn more about how we can support you, visit us at joy-recovery.com. There, you'll find information about our individual and couples coaching practice, designed to provide tailored support for both addicts and betrayed partners. You can also explore our various online groups, offering safe and confidential spaces for connection, shared experience, and growth. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, choose joy.